I should have known better than to let them organize my birthday. I never liked celebrations, not after my husband passed away. Birthdays had become quiet markers of time, a simple dinner for myself, or, if I felt brave, a glass of wine with an old colleague. But Evelyn insisted this year. She said it would be small, tasteful, just a handful of people who cared about me. She said I deserved a night where I did not have to cook or clean, only sit back and be loved. I wanted to believe her. She was, after all, the girl I had raised like my own, not by blood, but by choice. She had been 12 when her parents died in a car crash, and I had stepped in because no one else in the family wanted the responsibility. I gave her my roof, my food, my books. I paid for her schooling and bought her dresses when she begged for something new. She was mine in every way that mattered, and though we fought and drifted as she grew, I always thought of her as the child I never had. That is why I said yes when she suggested the dinner. The restaurant was in the center of Boston, tucked on a corner of a street that smelled of perfume and money. Inside, the air shimmered with the sound of glasses clinking, laughter bouncing off the walls, servers moving like dancers. Exposed brick, leather chairs, a ceiling lined with Edison bulbs that glowed too warmly. Everything looked curated for photographs rather than comfort. I felt out of place the moment I walked in, though I smiled as if I belonged. Evelyn jumped up the moment she saw me. She was stunning in a crimson dress, hair curled in glossy waves, her makeup sharp and deliberate. She hugged me like a long-lost sister, too tightly, as if she were staging affection for the cameras already aimed in our direction. Miles, her husband, stood behind her with a grin that felt stretched too thin. He held out a bottle of champagne like an offering. "Athena," Evelyn sang, her voice dripping with delight. "Our birthday star, the word struck me as odd, though I laughed it off and let her pull me toward the table. My friends were already seated, faces glowing under the golden light, their voices chiming in unison to wish me well. For a moment, I let myself breathe. For a moment, I believed this night might actually be what she promised. The meal began with oysters and wine. Conversations drifted between politics, books, and gossip about who had moved where. Evelyn sat close to me, brushing her hand against mine every few minutes, as though to remind everyone that we were inseparable. Miles filled glasses with champagne, making sure mine was never empty even when I barely touched it. It felt ordinary. Safe. Then dessert arrived. The waiter placed menus on the table, and as people debated between tiramisu and creme brulee, Evelyn rose from her chair. She held her phone up, screen glowing, recording already in progress. Her smile widened, perfected for the camera. "I have something wonderful to share tonight," she declared. Her voice rang louder than it needed to. "Athena has been so generous. She has decided to pass her penthouse on to us so we can start our family there." For a heartbeat, I thought I had misheard her. The words floated in the air like smoke, impossible to catch. Then came the reaction: gasps, cheers. The sharp clinking of glasses lifted in a toast. My friends turned toward me, faces lit with admiration, voices praising my kindness, my sacrifice, my legacy. I sat frozen, fork suspended between plate and mouth. I had said no such thing. Miles placed his hand on Evelyn's back, nodding as though to confirm the declaration. "It is true," he said warmly. "Athena has been thinking of this for a while. She knows we need space for the baby." The baby. The word struck like a stone. My chest tightened. Evelyn pressed closer, phone still aimed at my face, recording every flicker of my expression. "You will not regret this," she whispered loudly enough for the microphone to capture. "Your grandchild will grow up knowing the sacrifice you made." Grandchild. The room blurred. My friends clapped. One of them, an old neighbor, squeezed my arm and whispered, "What a gift! What a mother you are!" I could not breathe. I wanted to say no. I wanted to shout, to slam my hand on the table, to demand why she had lied, why she had staged this performance without my consent. But the camera glowed, capturing me, waiting. The eyes of the table pinned me down like a specimen under glass. And in that unbearable moment, panic overtook me. I smiled. A weak, trembling smile that felt like betrayal pouring from my own mouth. "Yes," I whispered, though it was not agreement. It was survival. The table erupted again. Glasses lifted. Wine spilled. Evelyn hugged me and kissed my cheek, her perfume cloying and heavy. Miles raised his glass high. "To Athena, the most selfless woman we know, to the future." I could not move. My glass remained untouched. The rest of the meal passed in a haze. Evelyn spoke of paint swatches and nursery colors. Miles described how they would remodel the kitchen to suit their style. My friends nodded, charmed, delighted. No one looked at me long enough to notice my silence, my hand trembling as it held the fork. I excused myself before dessert was served. Evelyn offered to call me a car, her voice syrupy, her eyes shining with triumph. I declined. I walked home, heels cutting into my skin, lungs burning with each step. The pain was grounding, the only thing that kept me from collapsing on the sidewalk. When I reached the penthouse, I closed the door and locked it twice. My husband's photographs lined the shelf in the living room. For years they had been comfort, reminders of love that once steadied me. That night they looked like warnings. His smile seemed to ask me why I had not fought back, why I had let her words stand. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark, my hands flat on the surface, the silence pressing down harder than noise ever could. My home, the place I had loved for 3 decades, felt invaded. Not safe. Not mine. That was the night I understood. I had not been celebrated. I had been trapped. And the trap had only just begun to close. I barely slept that night. My body was exhausted from the walk home, but my mind would not let me rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Evelyn's smile, the triumphant curve of her lips as she announced something that had never belonged to her. I saw Miles's nod, so calm, so certain, like a man who had already signed the papers. And I heard the applause, the laughter, the ringing of glasses, all of it replayed in a loop that squeezed my chest tighter with each cycle. At some point in the early hours, I got up and wandered through the apartment. The penthouse was quiet, only the hum of the refrigerator breaking the silence. My hand touched the walls as I moved through the rooms. Every surface, every corner carried my husband's presence. He had chosen the bookshelves, he had painted the bedroom walls, he had patched the leak in the ceiling when money was tight. This place was not just property. It was the life we had built, piece by piece, through love and stubbornness. And now, with a single sentence at a dinner table, Evelyn had claimed it as hers. I stopped in front of the large window that overlooked the city. The skyline glittered in the distance, but I felt no pride in the view. All I felt was a sharp, gnawing fear. What if people believed her? What if my silence was twisted into agreement? The thought made my stomach twist. I hurried to the bedroom and pulled out an old file box I had not touched in years. Inside were documents my husband had kept meticulously organized. The deed to the apartment, insurance policies, medical directives, tax records. I flipped through them, searching for something, though I did not know exactly what. And then I found it. A document I had signed 2 years ago when pneumonia landed me in the hospital. At the time, Evelyn had brought the papers to me, saying they were routine, that I needed to sign so she could help with medical insurance. I had been weak, hooked to tubes, desperate to focus on breathing rather than reading fine print. I signed. And there it was, a durable power of attorney naming Evelyn as my proxy in case of incapacity. My breath caught. The paper trembled in my hands. My mind raced with possibilities. She could use this. She could say I was unfit, confused, too fragile to manage my own affairs. One doctor's note might be enough to challenge me. The weight of that possibility pressed down like a stone. I closed the box and pushed it back into the closet, but the knowledge stayed lodged inside me like a splinter. By the time morning arrived, I had not slept at all. My reflection in the bathroom mirror looked 10 years older. Lines cut deep into my face, my eyes ringed with shadows. I tried to wash the exhaustion away, but the water only reminded me of the hospital, of the tubes, of the pen scratching my name onto papers I had not read. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, trying to think. My phone buzzed with notifications. At first I ignored them, then curiosity pulled me in. Evelyn had posted a video. The footage was from last night's dinner. Slow, panning shots of my living room, my bookshelves, my curtains, all paired with soft acoustic music. The caption read, "The beginning of our family's next chapter. Saying goodbye to Grandma's place and hello to our new home." My couch, my shelves, my windows, all of it displayed as if it already belonged to her. The comments poured in. So sweet of her to pass it down. What a legacy. She must be so proud. Dozens of strangers cheering for her generosity. My generosity, I scrolled until I could not breathe. Minutes later, another email arrived in my inbox. It was from Miles. A transition plan, he called it. A list of what they wanted moved out by the end of the month, suggested dates for the handover, even a link to a Pinterest board titled Neutral Nursery Aesthetic. I clicked it. My bedroom stripped of furniture, replaced with a crib and rocking chair. My sewing room painted in muted pastels. My life rearranged as if I had already agreed. But I had not. The phone buzzed again. Another message. This one from Evelyn with a photo of her holding a paint sample against my living room wall. "We are thinking light gray," the caption read, a smiley face at the end as if this was all harmless fun. I closed the phone and pushed it away. My hands shook. The air in the apartment felt heavy, poisonous. Every object around me seemed marked by their fingerprints, their future plans. My sanctuary was dissolving under their narrative, and I was the only one who knew it was a lie. I stood up, my knees weak, and locked the front door. I checked it again, then again. For the first time in 30 years, I felt unsafe in my own home. That was when it hit me with brutal clarity. Evelyn had not made a mistake. She had not spoken out of turn. She had executed a plan, and I, foolishly silent, had played my part in letting it happen. I poured the coffee down the sink and gripped the counter until my knuckles whitened. Fear was there, yes, but beneath it something else was beginning to stir. A hardness I had not felt in years, a refusal to be erased. Evelyn thought she had written the first chapter of her new story. What she did not know was that I had not yet told mine. The morning after the dinner, I woke with the strange sensation that someone had rearranged my life while I slept. The apartment was the same, the furniture untouched, the books in their places, but something had shifted. It felt like walking into a theater after the actors had left, the props still on stage but the performance stolen from you. I stood in the kitchen with my coffee cooling in my hands and wondered if I was still the main character in my own story. The phone buzzed. I had ignored it through the night, turning it face down on the nightstand, but the vibration persisted until I gave in. Evelyn's name lit the screen, her face smiling in the profile picture I had chosen years ago. I opened the notification and nearly dropped the phone. It was a video. Not just any video, but a carefully edited montage from last night. She had clipped my smile, the one I gave in panic, and slowed it down so it looked serene. She had added soft acoustic guitar, the kind people use in wedding reels. The caption read, "The beginning of our family's next chapter. Saying goodbye to Grandma's place and hello to our new home." My chest tightened. She had filmed everything, my apartment, my balcony, even the lace curtains my husband once teased me about keeping. It was all there for strangers to scroll through as if it already belonged to her. The comments poured in, endless voices I did not know. So beautiful. What a gift. She must be so proud. Dozens, then hundreds, each one like a nail hammered into the coffin of my truth. I set the phone down, but the words echoed anyway. Proud, gift, next chapter. They believed the story she had written, and because I had not contradicted her, they assumed it was mine too. The rest of the morning blurred. I walked from room to room, touching the walls, the frames, the bookshelves. My husband's photograph smiled at me from the hallway, but the smile looked different now, almost sad. He had built that bookshelf with his hands, sanding the wood until it was smooth enough for our wedding photos. Would Evelyn call it outdated? Would she paint over the marks where I had measured his height as a joke, even though he was already grown? I tried to breathe, but my throat closed. I opened the closet and pulled out the file box I had avoided since his death. The folders smelled faintly of dust and paper, of the past I had buried. My husband had been meticulous, labeling everything in bold black marker. Insurance, taxes, deeds, and there in the middle something that made my stomach drop, power of attorney. I opened it with trembling hands. I remembered the day now, 2 years ago, pneumonia knocking me flat in the hospital bed. Evelyn had arrived with papers, telling me it was all for insurance. I had been tired, weak, barely able to speak without coughing. She smiled, stroked my hair, told me she just wanted to help. I signed without reading, and here it was. My name, her name, my signature beneath a line that handed her authority if I was ever deemed unfit. My knees nearly gave out. I sank onto the floor, the paper trembling in my grip. One doctor's note, one careless phrase about confusion or memory loss, and Evelyn could use this to challenge me. The thought hollowed me out from the inside. I shoved the folder back into the box, but the words stayed in my head. Durable power of attorney. Evelyn Myers. Valid unless revoked. I locked the closet and sat at the table until the light outside shifted from gold to gray. The coffee had gone cold, untouched, but I could not move. Every sound in the apartment, the hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock, felt threatening, as if the walls themselves were preparing to testify against me. The phone buzzed again. Another post. Evelyn this time, standing in front of my sewing room. Turning Grandma's old space into a cozy nursery, the caption read. We cannot wait. The comments praised her vision. Someone wrote, what a lucky baby. Another, Athena is such an angel. I gripped the phone until my fingers hurt. The sewing room was mine. My thread, my fabric, my half-finished projects. It was the one place I still felt creative, alive. And now it was being offered to strangers as if it were already wallpapered in pastel clouds. I did not reply. I did not comment. But something inside me cracked. That night, I tried to cook. I chopped onions, boiled pasta, but when I sat down the food tasted like ash. I poured wine, but the smell made me sick. I pushed the plate away and sat in the dark, staring at the window where the city lights glowed against the glass. I thought of Evelyn's words, our home, our nursery, our future, and felt my body tighten like a fist. I wanted to call her. I wanted to scream. But I knew what she would do. She would record me, post it, twist it into proof that I was unstable. She was not just stealing a home. She was building a case, brick by brick, in the court of public opinion. So instead, I opened a notebook. I wrote the date at the top, neat and clear. Then I wrote everything I remembered. The dinner, her announcement, my silence, the video, the comments, every word, every detail. My handwriting was sharp, my sentences deliberate. It was not a diary. It was a record, a defense. When I finished, my hand ached, but I felt lighter. For the first time since the dinner, I had reclaimed a piece of myself. As I closed the notebook, a thought flickered in my mind. Evelyn believed she had already won, that I would crumble under her story, but she had underestimated me. I was not gone yet. The following morning, I woke before sunrise. The city outside my window was still quiet, just a faint hum of traffic far below. For a moment, half asleep, I almost believed the nightmare had passed. The apartment looked the same as always. The bookshelves still heavy with the weight of my husband's collection, the curtains still swaying slightly with the draft from the window, the familiar scent of lavender from the sachet I kept in the closet. But then the phone buzzed, and reality returned with a sting. It was another notification from Evelyn. This time, a glossy photo of her and Miles standing in my living room. They were holding up color swatches, grinning like newlyweds on a magazine cover. Behind them, my shelves, my books, my life, reduced to background decoration. The caption said, "Bringing warmth back into this beautiful space. Excited for the journey ahead." My throat tightened. She had entered the apartment without permission. Or had I given her a spare key long ago? My mind tried to remember, but panic blurred the details. I stared at the picture, my chest aching, until my eyes fell to the comments. "So happy for you guys," one friend wrote. "Such a smooth transition," another added. Evelyn's reply was a heart emoji. Smooth transition. My hands trembled. She was not just sharing an update. She was crafting a timeline, a script where I had already exited the stage. I left the phone on the counter and walked aimlessly through the rooms. Every detail that once soothed me now screamed betrayal. The quilt on the bed, stitched by my mother, the framed photograph of me and my husband clinking glasses after we first moved in, the clock ticking in the kitchen. All of it seemed fragile, vulnerable, like prey being stalked by hunters who circled closer with every step. By mid-morning, I could not sit still. I put on my coat and decided to walk to clear my head. The air outside was cold, crisp, almost sharp enough to cut through the fog of dread. I walked without direction, past coffee shops and bookstores, past groups of young people laughing and recording each other on their phones. For the first time, I wondered if my own life had become someone else's content, my reality transformed into Evelyn's storyline for strangers to consume. When I finally returned to the building, the doorman greeted me with a smile. "Congratulations," he said warmly. I stopped short. "For what?" "On becoming a grandmother," he replied. "Your granddaughter was here yesterday. She said you're moving out soon. She even asked me about parking permits for an extra car." My stomach lurched. Blood rushed in my ears. Evelyn was not only spreading her narrative online, she was planting it in real life, weaving it into the fabric of my building, into the mouths of people who had no reason to doubt her. I forced a brittle smile. "Ah, thank you," I murmured, my voice thin. Then I hurried upstairs, every step heavier than the last. The moment I closed my apartment door, I locked it twice. My back pressed against the wood, I stood there, trembling. It felt as though the walls themselves had betrayed me, carrying whispers of my supposed generosity down to the lobby, into the ears of strangers. I moved from room to room, checking windows, testing locks, opening closets as if someone might be hiding inside. For the first time in 3 decades, I did not feel safe. Finally, I sat at the dining table with my notebook. My hand shook as I opened it, but once the pen touched the page, I grew steadier. I recorded every detail of what the doorman had said. I wrote the exact phrase, "moving out soon," and underlined it twice. I described the look on his face, the casual tone of his voice, the certainty behind his words. Then I turned to a new page and made a list. Line after line of everything I had done for Evelyn. I wrote about the tuition I had helped cover when she fell behind, the rent deposits I had provided when she and Miles struggled, the down payment for her wedding dress, the catering bills I had chipped in on, the loan I had given them for IVF treatments 2 years ago that had gone nowhere. I wrote it all, each word a reminder that I had given, and still they wanted more. By the time I put the pen down, the page was full. My chest hurt. I sat back, staring at my reflection in the dark window. My face looked older, harsher, the softness drained away. I did not look like someone who had been defeated. I looked like someone preparing for battle. The night crept in, heavy and suffocating. I tried to sleep, but my dreams twisted into nightmares. I saw locks breaking, strangers wandering through my rooms, Evelyn's voice echoing like a chant. She agreed. She agreed. She agreed. I woke in a sweat, tangled in the sheets like they were ropes. My heart pounded, my throat dry. For a long time, I just sat there, listening to the silence. Then, quietly, I whispered into the darkness, "I never agreed." The words were small, almost fragile, but they were mine. Saying them aloud steadied me, reminded me that my truth still existed, even if no one else saw it. I got out of bed, pulled my robe tight around me, and returned to the notebook. I dated the page. I wrote the time. And then, in deliberate strokes, I wrote, "They are lying. They are planning. And I am not done." The sound of the pen on paper was sharp, final, like a blade slicing through fog. When I closed the book, I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not even anger, but resolve. Evelyn thought she had secured the narrative. She thought the world already belonged to her. She had no idea that I was still here, and I was not going anywhere. In the days that followed, the boundaries of my life began to blur. What used to be mine, my space, my story, my silence, was slowly invaded by voices that did not belong to me. Evelyn and Miles treated my home as if it were an open canvas. They did not wait for permission. They simply acted, certain that no one would stop them. It started with deliveries. Packages left in the lobby with Evelyn's name but my address. Rolls of fabric, paint samples, a small crib flat-packed in cardboard. The concierge carried them up, assuming I was helping with the baby, congratulating me as if I had personally ordered them. I signed each delivery with a forced smile, then pushed the boxes against the wall, unwilling to open them, unwilling to admit they were inside my walls. One afternoon, I returned from a walk to find Evelyn and Miles already in the apartment. They stood in the living room, measuring the windows. Evelyn's heels tapped against the hardwood as she paced, talking about curtain rods and lighting fixtures. Miles scribbled notes on a clipboard, nodding at everything she said. My throat tightened. "You should have told me you were coming," I managed. Evelyn barely looked up. "We did not want to bother you. Besides, you will be moving soon. We just want to get a head start." She said it with the ease of someone stating the weather, her voice dripping with casual authority. I opened my mouth and closed it again. The words felt dangerous. Anything I said could be twisted, recorded, used against me. I stood there, frozen, while Evelyn gestured toward my bookshelf. "This one can go. Too old-fashioned. We will replace it with something lighter, more modern." My chest ached. My husband had built that shelf with his own hands 30 years ago. I had watched him sand the wood until his palms blistered. To Evelyn, it was nothing but clutter. I excused myself and retreated to the kitchen, gripping the counter until my knuckles turned white. I could hear their voices drifting from the living room, planning, laughing, already erasing me. That evening, I wrote it all down in the notebook. Date, time, words. They entered without permission. They measured the windows. Evelyn dismissed the bookshelf as old-fashioned. My handwriting was sharp, carved into the page as though to pin the truth down before it slipped away. The next day, Evelyn posted again. This time it was a short video, a slow pan across my hallway, captioned, "Every corner holds potential. Transformation begins soon." The comments flooded in. "Beautiful bones. So exciting. This space will be amazing for the baby." I felt my chest tighten with each word. It was not just about the apartment anymore. Evelyn was shaping a story, curating an illusion where I was a willing participant, the generous grandmother passing on her legacy. And the more she posted, the more people believed. Even family began to call. My sister rang one evening, her voice sharp. "Athena, is it true you are giving them the penthouse? You did not even tell me." I swallowed hard. "I did not give it to them." She sighed, unimpressed. "Then why are they saying you did? Why are you letting them post all over the internet? It makes you look confused." Confused. The word cut deeper than she knew. After the call, I sat in the dark, staring at the glow of my phone. My own family doubted me. Evelyn had planted the seeds well. I was not simply being replaced. I was being rewritten. That night, I could not bring myself to eat. I sat with the notebook open, adding every detail, every phrase, every slip of doubt that others expressed. I began to take photographs of the posts with time stamps, printing them on my old printer. I kept them in a folder labeled proof. I realized then that I could not rely on words alone. I needed evidence. I needed something undeniable, something that would hold up even if the whole world believed Evelyn's story. So I began to record. Not with a camera, but with my memory sharpened to a blade. Every sound, every glance, every intrusion. I documented them all. By the end of the week, the folder was growing. Dozens of screenshots, printouts, notes. Evelyn thought she was writing a fairy tale. She did not realize that I was archiving her fraud in real time. But beneath the steady hand of documentation, fear still lurked. What if it was not enough? What if she found a doctor willing to say I was slipping, that my memory was failing, that I was unfit to manage my own life? One paper, one signature, and she could drag me into court. The thought haunted me, pressing down on my chest until I struggled to breathe. Yet even as fear gnawed at me, another feeling stirred: determination. Evelyn had underestimated me, assuming my silence was weakness. She thought she could build her empire of lies without resistance. She was wrong. I was watching, I was recording, and I was waiting. The following week passed like a storm with no rain. The air was heavy, electric, ready to strike at any moment. Evelyn's presence clung to the apartment even when she was not there, like a perfume I could not wash away. Every time the elevator door opened on my floor, my heart leapt, expecting her heels on the hardwood, her phone camera glowing, her voice calling the place home. It was Miles who came first that week, not Evelyn. I found him in the hallway one afternoon, crouched near the breaker box with a toolkit. "Just checking the wiring," he said smoothly when I confronted him. "This place is old. We do not want surprises when the baby arrives." The baby. That word again, wielded like a key to every door. My jaw clenched. I wanted to tell him to leave, that this was not his place, not his wiring, not his responsibility. But I stood frozen, my mouth dry. He smiled as though he had already won, then scribbled something on a clipboard before leaving. As soon as the door closed behind him, I wrote it all down in my notebook. Miles entered without notice. Claimed to check wiring. Mentioned the baby, assumed ownership. The pen dug into the paper, the letters pressed so deep they nearly tore the page. Later that day, my phone lit up again. Evelyn had posted a photo of herself standing in my kitchen, holding a mug. The caption read, "Nothing like morning coffee in our new space. Feels like home already." The comments showered her with love. "So cozy? That kitchen is perfect. Athena must be so proud." My hands shook as I read them. Coffee. That mug was mine. My husband had given it to me on our anniversary, painted with a skyline of the city where we first met. It was the only mug I used, the only one that mattered. Seeing it in her hands was like watching a stranger cradle my memories. I printed the post and added it to the folder marked proof. The folder was thickening now, heavy with paper, evidence of their intrusion. Yet the more I collected, the more powerless I felt. Proof meant nothing if the world refused to believe me. That evening, I called my friend Margaret. She had known me for 30 years, surely she would understand. I told her everything: the dinner, the video, the posts, the lies. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Athena," she said softly, "are you sure you are not misremembering? You seemed so happy in the video." The words cut like glass. Misremembering. That was all it would take. One doctor repeating the same doubt, one judge nodding along, and my world would collapse. I hung up before my voice betrayed me. I sat in the dark kitchen, the city humming outside my windows, and realized something horrifying. Evelyn did not need to prove she was right. She only needed to make people believe I was wrong. The next day, I heard voices in the hallway. I pressed my ear to the door. Evelyn was speaking to a neighbor, laughing. "We are so lucky," Grandma agreed. "It is such a gift. She wants the baby to grow up here." The neighbor cooed back. "So generous of her." I stepped away from the door, my stomach twisting. My own neighbors, the people who had shared this building with me for decades, were being folded into her story. Soon, when the time came, they would testify against me without even realizing it. That night, I could not sleep. I paced the apartment, checked the locks again and again, then sat at the table with my notebook. I wrote until my hand cramped, recording every sound, every conversation, every intrusion. My handwriting turned jagged, my sentences clipped, but the act of writing steadied me. Before dawn, I whispered to myself, "She is building a web." That was what it felt like. Each post, each comment, each casual remark to neighbors or friends, threads spun carefully around me. With every passing day, the web grew thicker and I felt myself stuck deeper. But a web is fragile too. One well-placed cut and the whole thing collapses. I closed the notebook and pressed it to my chest. I was not helpless. I still had the truth. I still had my mind, no matter how much Evelyn wanted to twist it. She believed she was the spider. She had no idea the prey was awake. It was a Thursday afternoon when the letter arrived. I found it tucked among grocery flyers and bills in the mailbox downstairs, the envelope crisp and official. My name was typed neatly across the front, though I did not recognize the sender. Back in the apartment, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at it. My fingers hesitated before tearing the flap. Inside was a formal notice, stamped with the seal of a law office. My pulse quickened as I read. It was not a bill. It was not junk mail. It was a request for a wellness evaluation. A polite but firm letter stating that concerns had been raised about my mental fitness and that an independent assessor would be visiting within 2 weeks. The words blurred. My chest squeezed until I gasped for air. I gripped the table edge, the wood digging into my palms. Concerns? Raised by whom? I did not need to ask. I could hear Evelyn's voice in every line. She seemed confused. She is not coping well. She forgets things. The floor seemed to tilt. I pressed my forehead to the cool surface of the table and tried to breathe. My hands shook so violently that the paper fluttered like a trapped bird. I forced myself to read it again, slower this time. The letter was couched in gentle language, but its message was clear. Someone wanted proof that I was no longer capable of making decisions. If the evaluation went poorly, Evelyn could use it. Combine it with the power of attorney, with her curated story online, with neighbors who already believed her lies, and she would have the perfect case to strip me of everything. I pushed the letter aside and stood. My reflection in the window looked pale, unsteady, older than I remembered. For the first time, I wondered if that was how others saw me too. A fragile woman past her prime, easy to manipulate, easy to dismiss. The phone buzzed. Another post from Evelyn. This one showed her standing in my bedroom, holding paint samples against the wall. Dreaming of soft colors for the nursery, she had written with a heart emoji. My bedroom, the room where I had slept beside my husband for decades, where we whispered secrets into the dark. Now plastered online as part of her fantasy. My stomach lurched. I printed the post and added it to the folder, then slipped the letter from the law office inside as well. The folder was growing thick, heavy, a weight of truth against her web of lies. That night, I could not bring myself to turn off the lights. I sat in the living room, every lamp glowing, shadows banished. I listened to the hum of the refrigerator, the faint creak of pipes. Every sound felt like a warning. At some point, exhaustion pulled me into a shallow sleep. When I woke, the room was gray with dawn. For a moment, I thought I heard movement in the hallway. I rose quietly, heart pounding, and pressed my ear to the door. Silence. Still, I checked the locks again, until my hands ached. By mid-morning, I decided I could not face this alone. I gathered the folder, slipped it into my bag, and walked to the office of an attorney recommended years ago by a neighbor. The receptionist eyed me politely, perhaps suspiciously, but I was ushered into a small room with framed degrees on the wall. The lawyer, Mr. Grant, listened patiently as I explained. I laid out the posts, the photos, the letter. His eyes narrowed as he flipped through the papers. Finally, he set them down and folded his hands. "You need to be careful," he said. "From the outside, it looks like you consented. You smiled at that dinner. You signed a power of attorney. She is documenting a consistent narrative and people believe her." My chest tightened. "But it is not true. I never agreed. She is lying." "I believe you," he said gently. "But courts believe paper, not words. We can challenge her, but you must prepare. Gather everything. Dates, times, witnesses. If there are gaps, she will exploit them." I nodded, gripping the edge of my chair. His words were not comfort, but they were clarity. When I left the office, the sun was setting. The city lights blinked awake, indifferent to my battle. I walked home slowly, the folder heavier than before. Back in the apartment, I poured myself tea and opened the notebook. I wrote down every word Mr. Grant had said. Then, with steady hand, I made a new entry. Evelyn is not careless. She is deliberate. She wants proof of my weakness. She is preparing for court. I must prepare for war. As I set down the pen, I felt a shift inside me. For weeks I had been reacting, scrambling in fear as Evelyn pulled the strings. But now, for the first time, I saw the outline of her plan. And with that outline came something unexpected. Not just fear, not just anger, but strategy. The following days unfolded like a slow suffocation. Each hour carried new proof that Evelyn's plan was no longer just whispers and photographs. It was becoming reality, solid as the walls around me. On Monday, a delivery truck arrived outside the building. From my window, I watched 2 men unload a crib, boxes of baby clothes, and several large cartons stamped with the name of a designer furniture company. I told myself it was a coincidence, that perhaps they had delivered to the wrong address. But when the concierge called to ask if I wanted them brought upstairs, my stomach turned. Evelyn had shipped them here, to me, to my address as if she were already certain. I refused delivery, but the damage was done. The concierge's raised eyebrows told me everything. He believed her story too. On Wednesday, I returned from the grocery store to find a note slipped under my door. The paper was thick, embossed with a real estate company's logo. Interested in selling your property? We have buyers ready to invest. Call us for a consultation. I sank to the floor, the groceries spilling around me. Evelyn had not just whispered her version of events, she had spread it wide enough for the market to sniff. My home was not simply being claimed. It was being appraised, commodified, turned into an asset ready to trade hands. That night I called Mr. Grant again. My voice shook as I explained the letter, the deliveries, the relentless posts Evelyn uploaded every day. He listened, then sighed. This is bigger than social media now. She is moving fast. The wellness evaluation could be her way of building credibility before making a legal move. You must prepare yourself. Prepare how? I whispered. Find allies, he said. People who know your mind is sharp. Keep documenting. And Athena, do not let her provoke you. Anger will be her strongest weapon against you. I hung up, his words ringing in my ears. Do not let her provoke you. But how could I not? Every photo, every caption was a provocation. The next day, the wellness evaluator called, a polite woman with a measured tone, asking to schedule an appointment in 2 weeks. Her voice was calm, clinical, but I heard Evelyn behind every syllable. I agreed to the appointment, though my stomach churned with dread. That night, I opened my notebook and wrote, "She is accelerating. She wants me cornered before I can resist. If I fail the evaluation, she will use it. If I lose control, she will use it. I must stay steady." But staying steady felt impossible when the apartment itself seemed to turn against me. Every object now whispered of Evelyn. The mug she had used, the bookshelf she dismissed, the bed she wanted to paint over. My sanctuary was dissolving before my eyes. On Friday evening, I received another envelope. This one not from a law office, but from the building management. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a notice of upcoming renovations, requested by Evelyn and Miles. They had filed paperwork to update the space for family use. The form listed my apartment number. I stared at the page until the letters blurred. She had gone that far. She had filed documents in my name without my consent. I dialed the building office immediately. The manager answered cheerful. "Yes, we received the request from your granddaughter. Congratulations, it's wonderful to see family stepping in to help." The room spun, my voice cracked. "She is not my proxy. She had no right to file that." The manager hesitated, then said gently, "But Ms. Myers, she showed us the paperwork. She has authority, the power of attorney." The signature I had scrawled in a hospital bed years ago, Evelyn had finally used it. I dropped the phone, my pulse roaring in my ears. The first domino had fallen. I stumbled to the notebook, opened it, and wrote with jagged strokes, "She filed renovations in my name. She used the power of attorney. She has crossed the line." My hands shook so violently the pen tore the page. I pressed harder, carving the words into the paper as though to anchor myself to reality. And then the true horror struck me. If she had already used the document once, what else had she done behind my back? Bank accounts, utilities, medical records. My life was not just being erased. It was being rewritten in ink, line by line, while I sat helpless in the margins. I pressed my forehead to the notebook and whispered into the silence, "She is not waiting for me to die. She is killing me on paper." For the first time, I wept. But even through the tears, a fire burned in me. Because this was the twist I had not expected. Evelyn was not content with lies or whispers. She was already acting as though I were gone, and if she thought I would surrender quietly, she was wrong. The weekend after the renovation notice, I stopped pacing and started planning. The shock had settled into my bones, but beneath it burned something harder, sharper. Fear had kept me paralyzed. Fear had allowed Evelyn to step across every boundary, but fear was no longer enough to hold me. I spread everything across the dining table, the folder stuffed with screenshots and letters, the notebook filled with my handwriting, the printouts curling at the edges from ink. My apartment looked less like a home and more like an evidence room. Every page screamed of Evelyn's audacity, of Miles's quiet complicity. I sharpened a pencil and began to make a list. Not a list of what she had taken, no, that list was endless, but of what I still had. My name was still on the deed. My memories were still intact. My neighbors, though poisoned by Evelyn's words, had known me for decades. If I could remind them who I was, not who Evelyn painted me to be, perhaps I could salvage something. So I began with letters. Handwritten, personal, to Margaret, to my sister, to the few friends who had hesitated but not yet abandoned me. I wrote slowly, carefully, choosing words like stitches. I reminded them of moments we had shared, weddings, funerals, quiet dinners. I told them the truth without begging. You know me, you know my mind. Do not believe the story being told in my name. By the time I sealed the last envelope, the sun was rising, painting the sky a thin, pale blue. My hand cramped, ink smudged across my skin, but I felt a strange relief. Evelyn could flood the internet with her illusions, but I would flood the people who mattered with something harder to erase: memory. 2 days later, the replies began to trickle in. Margaret called, her voice uncertain but softer than before. Athena, I'm sorry, I should not have doubted you. I saw Evelyn's videos and they seemed so convincing. But your letter reminded me who you are. You are not confused, you are not weak. Tears blurred my vision. Thank you, I whispered. It was not victory, not yet, but it was a foothold. Encouraged, I pressed further. I visited the building manager in person, folder in hand. He greeted me politely, but I saw doubt in his eyes, the shadow Evelyn had left behind. I placed the renovation notice on his desk, then laid down my notebook, opened to the page where I had documented the date and time Evelyn filed it. This was done without my consent, I said firmly. I am still the legal owner. She had no right. He frowned, flipping through the papers. But she showed us a power of attorney. I leaned forward. That document only applies if I am incapacitated. Do I look incapacitated to you? My voice did not waver, though my heart pounded. His eyes shifted. He hesitated, then nodded. I see your point, Ms. Myers. I will pause the request until further verification. Relief washed over me so suddenly I had to grip the chair to steady myself. It was a small win, but a win nonetheless. That night, I poured myself tea instead of wine and sat at the table with the notebook open. For the first time in weeks, my handwriting felt lighter, less jagged. I wrote, the renovations are on hold. The narrative is not complete. I still have ground to stand on, but victories came with consequences. The very next morning, Evelyn appeared at my door. She did not knock timidly. She hammered until the walls shook. When I opened the door, she strode in without waiting for permission, her perfume sharp, her phone already in her hand. You embarrassed me, she snapped. The building manager called. He said you are contesting the renovations. Do you realize how that makes me look? I stood tall, though my knees trembled. This is my home. You cannot erase me with paperwork and hashtags. She laughed, a harsh sound. Erase you? I am honoring you. You should be grateful. I am making sure your legacy lives on. People adore the story. You cannot change it now. It is bigger than you. Her words cut, but I forced myself to breathe. It is not bigger than the truth. For a moment, her eyes flickered, uncertain. Then she raised her phone and pointed it at me. Say that again, she coaxed, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Tell everyone you do not want this. I froze. If I shouted, if I lashed out, she would post it, twist it, frame it as proof of my instability. My pulse raced, but I forced my voice into calm evenness. Turn off the camera, Evelyn. This is not a performance. She lowered the phone slightly, lips curling into a smirk. You are smarter than you look. Fine, but this fight will not end well for you. She turned and swept out, her heels striking the floor like gunshots. When the door shut behind her, I sagged against it, my whole body trembling. She had tried to bait me, to trap me on film, but I had not given her the satisfaction. That night, I wrote until my hand ached. She came in person. She tried to provoke me. I stayed calm. She is escalating. She knows I am resisting. The next morning, another envelope arrived, this one from the wellness evaluator, confirming the appointment. 2 weeks. 2 weeks until a stranger stepped into my home and decided whether I was competent enough to hold on to my life. Fear threatened to choke me again, but beneath it, resolve hardened. 2 weeks was not much, but it was enough. Enough to prepare, to gather, to fight. I closed the notebook and whispered to myself, she wants me to crumble. I will not. I will make them see. The days leading up to the evaluation became a strange rhythm of fear and defiance. I woke every morning with a knot in my stomach, but instead of hiding under the covers, I forced myself into action. If Evelyn wanted to paint me as unstable, then I would be the picture of clarity. I started with my routine. Each morning, I brewed tea instead of wine, sat at the table, and wrote in my notebook. Not frantic notes this time, but deliberate, steady reflections. The act of writing was not only proof of my mind's sharpness, it was an anchor, something to hold me steady when the walls closed in. I called friends, too, the ones who had not yet drifted too far from me. I asked them to dinner, invited them into the apartment. They arrived cautiously, their eyes scanning the rooms that Evelyn had already plastered across the internet. But once they sat with me, once we shared a meal and laughter, I saw their doubts soften. One of them, an old colleague named David, squeezed my hand before leaving. You are not what she says, I will vouch for you. Those words became my lifeline, but Evelyn was not idle. Every day she posted more, weaving her story tighter. A picture of Miles painting a sample board leaned against my kitchen wall. A video of her holding up a tiny baby blanket with the caption, "Soon this space will be filled with laughter." I printed them all, added them to the folder marked proof. My printer ink ran low, but I kept going. Each page was a weapon, small but real. One evening, while sorting the folder, I realized something chilling. Evelyn was not just posting about the apartment. She was posting about me. A photo of me at the dinner, smiling weakly, captioned, "Her generosity inspires us daily." A clip of me walking into the restaurant that night, slowed down with the words, "A queen passing the crown." She had cast me in her story as a benevolent but fading figure, the matriarch handing over the torch. The world was applauding a performance I had never agreed to give. I slammed the folder shut, bile rising in my throat. My life was not a stage. My choices were not props, yet Evelyn played me like a character in her carefully curated fantasy. The very next day, I found Miles again in the hallway. This time, he was speaking with a contractor, gesturing toward my door. When I approached, both men straightened. Miles smiled too easily. "Just discussing future plans," he said. I fixed him with a steady gaze. "There will be no future plans until I say so." The contractor shifted uncomfortably, muttered an excuse, and left. Miles leaned closer, his voice low, almost kind. "Athena, this is bigger than you. Do not make it harder on yourself. Evelyn just wants what is best for the family." For a moment, I almost laughed. What is best for the family? A phrase polished to sound noble, but sharpened underneath. I stepped back into my apartment and shut the door in his face. Then I wrote the encounter down, every word, every look, so it could not be twisted later. At night, I rehearsed for the evaluation. I spoke out loud, clear, and deliberate, answering questions no one had asked yet. I practiced recounting dates, names, events, until my voice grew hoarse. I would not stumble. I would not give them the crack Evelyn needed to wedge open the door. Still, sleep eluded me. When I closed my eyes, I dreamed of courts and judges, of Evelyn standing triumphant while my keys were taken away. I woke gasping, clutching the notebook to my chest like a shield. On the final evening before the evaluator was scheduled to arrive, I lit every lamp in the apartment and sat at the dining table with the folder open before me. The evidence glowed under the yellow light, each page a silent ally. I whispered to myself, "You are not broken. You are not fading. You are still here." And though fear still gnawed at me, I felt something stronger rise beneath it. A stubbornness Evelyn had underestimated. A steel spine that had carried me through grief, through loneliness, through years of silence. She thought I would crumble in the spotlight she had forced on me. But tomorrow, when the evaluator walked through my door, they would not see confusion. They would see me, Athena Myers, alive, sharp, unbroken. And Evelyn would learn that I was not done fighting. The evaluator arrived on a gray Tuesday morning. The sky hung heavy with clouds, and the city outside seemed to hold its breath. I had been awake since 4, pacing the apartment, straightening the bookshelves, arranging the evidence on the dining table. I told myself to stay calm, but my hands trembled as I brewed tea, the kettle whistling too sharply in the quiet. At 9 o'clock sharp, the knock came. A woman stood in the doorway, slim, neatly dressed, a leather folder tucked under her arm. Her smile was professional, practiced. "Ms. Myers, I'm Dr. Halpern. May I come in?" I stepped aside, gesturing her in. "Please, welcome." She moved with the quiet confidence of someone used to judging rooms, judging people. Her eyes swept over the apartment, lingering on the photographs, the folder of documents on the table, the neatly arranged mugs on the counter. I wondered what she saw, a woman in control or a woman staging her life like a set. We sat at the table. She opened her folder, clicked a pen. "This will be a conversation, nothing more. I simply want to understand how you're managing day-to-day tasks, your memory, your decision-making. Do you feel comfortable?" I nodded, though my throat was dry. The questions began simply. What was today's date? The name of the president? The address of this apartment? I answered each clearly, firmly, as though reciting lines from a play I had rehearsed 1,000 times. She nodded, scribbling notes. Then she asked about my family. "Tell me about Evelyn," she said. I forced my voice to remain steady. "She is my granddaughter, ambitious, creative, persuasive, sometimes too persuasive." "And your relationship?" I hesitated. This was the moment Evelyn wanted. If I spoke too harshly, I might sound bitter, unstable. If I spoke too gently, I might sound confused, complicit. I chose my words carefully. "We were close once. She helped me when I was ill, but lately she has overstepped. She is making claims about this apartment that are not true." Dr. Halpern looked up, her eyes sharp. "Claims?" I pulled the folder toward me and slid it across the table. "Here, posts she's made online, letters she filed, documents she submitted in my name. I've recorded everything." She leafed through the pages, her brow furrowing. For a moment I saw something in her face, doubt, perhaps even sympathy. We continued for nearly an hour. She asked about bills, groceries, names of friends. I showed her my lists, my notebook, my letters. By the end, my voice felt raw, but I had not faltered. When she finally closed her folder, she gave me a small nod. "Thank you, Ms. Myers, you've been very thorough. I'll be compiling my report in the next few days." As I walked her to the door, Evelyn appeared. She must have been waiting in the hallway, timing her entrance. She swept inside with her usual brightness, phone in hand, smile wide. "Oh, Dr. Halpern. I didn't realize you'd be here already," she said, though her tone dripped with rehearsed innocence. "How did it go? Was Grandma cooperative?" My jaw tightened. Grandma. She always used that word when she wanted me small, diminished. Dr. Halpern offered a polite smile. She was perfectly cooperative, very forthcoming. Evelyn's smile flickered just for a second, then she slipped her phone back into her bag. "Well, that's wonderful. I'm sure you'll see what we've all seen, that she's struggling, but we only want the best for her." The evaluator left. Evelyn turned to me, her eyes sharp as glass. The mask dropped. "You won't win, Athena. No matter how many notebooks you fill, no matter how many times you repeat your truth. People believe me. They see me as the future and you as the past. It's only a matter of time." I met her gaze, forcing calm into my voice. "You underestimate me," she smirked. "Do I?" Then she left, her perfume lingering like smoke. I sank into the nearest chair, shaking. The apartment felt too quiet, too fragile. I wanted to believe Dr. Halpern had seen through Evelyn's performance, but doubt gnawed at me. That night, I dreamed of standing in a courtroom, my folder of evidence clutched to my chest. Evelyn stood across from me, radiant, her phone projecting videos of me smiling, nodding, silent. The judge watched her screen, not my face. And when the gavel fell, the sound was deafening. I woke gasping, clutching the sheets. The nightmare felt like prophecy, but the true twist came the next day. I went to retrieve the mail and found another letter, this one from the bank. My hands shook as I opened it. The words leapt out in black and white. "Your joint account has been accessed under power of attorney authorization." Several withdrawals, large ones. My blood ran cold. I had never made a joint account with Evelyn. Not knowingly, not willingly. But the paper was clear. She had moved beyond the apartment. She was draining me. For a long time I sat at the kitchen table, the letter limp in my hands. Then slowly I pulled the notebook toward me. I wrote in sharp, deliberate strokes, "She is not only after the apartment, she is after everything. She is bleeding me dry while smiling for the camera. The story is bigger than the home. The story is my life." As I set the pen down, I realized the truth Evelyn had hidden all along. The apartment was not her prize. I was. The bank letter lay on the table like a wound that would not close. I stared at it until the numbers blurred, each withdrawal another slice carved from my life. Evelyn had not just claimed the apartment, she had begun dismantling me piece by piece, stripping away the quiet foundation I had built over decades. I called the bank, my voice shaking as I demanded answers. The representative on the line was polite, almost detached, as though discussing a stranger's misfortune. "Yes, Ms. Myers, these transactions were authorized under the durable power of attorney on file. Your granddaughter provided the necessary documentation." "My granddaughter is not authorized unless I'm incapacitated," I snapped. A pause, paper shuffling. "According to the file, a physician's note was submitted last week, stating you may be showing signs of diminished capacity." The room spun. "What physician?" "I'm afraid I can't disclose that without a formal request." I hung up before my rage broke through the surface. My hand trembled as I pressed the phone to the table. A physician's note. Fabricated. Bought. Evelyn had not even waited for the evaluation. She had gone around it, securing her case before I had a chance to defend myself. That night, I could not eat. I could not sleep. I walked the apartment like a prisoner pacing a cell. Every corner felt infected by her presence. Every shadow whispered her name. Finally, near dawn, I returned to the notebook. My handwriting was sharp, almost violent. She submitted false medical documents. She is not waiting for proof. She is creating it. The evaluation tomorrow may not matter, she has already laid the groundwork. I closed the book and pressed my palm against its cover. For weeks I had believed Evelyn's goal was the apartment. But now the truth loomed in front of me, undeniable. She did not want the home. She wanted control. My money, my autonomy, my very name. And then came the moment that ripped the veil away completely. 2 days later, the evaluator's preliminary report arrived by email. I opened it with my stomach in knots, braced for the worst. The words were cautious, clinical, but clear. "Ms. Myers demonstrates sound judgment, accurate recall, and strong capacity for decision-making. No evidence of impairment at this time. Relief surged through me like sunlight after a storm. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to breathe. I had passed. The truth was on my side. But before I could celebrate, another notification appeared on my phone. A video Evelyn had posted, already spreading across her feed. It showed me at the dinner, smiling faintly, glass in hand. Her caption read, "The night Grandma entrusted us with her legacy. A moment we'll never forget." The video was slowed, the music sentimental, my hesitant smile framed like a blessing. I froze. The twist sliced through me. The report didn't matter. The truth didn't matter. Evelyn had understood something I had not. People do not believe documents. They believe stories. And she had been telling her story for months, weaving it into the minds of friends, neighbors, strangers. Even if the evaluator cleared me, even if the court sided with me, Evelyn had already won in the one arena that mattered: perception. The world would remember me as the generous old woman who handed her life to the next generation. I staggered to the couch, the weight of it pressing me down. My mind raced, replaying every smile, every nod, every silence she had captured on camera. I had not fought back then, and those moments had become her proof. For hours I sat there, staring at the dark window. Finally, I whispered to the empty room, "She isn't stealing from me. She is rewriting me." And in that whisper came the full horror of the plot twist. Evelyn didn't need my apartment. She didn't need my money. What she craved was authorship. She wanted to own the story of me, Athena Myers, the fading matriarch who stepped aside with grace. But as that realization settled in, so did something else. If she wanted to control the narrative, then the only weapon I had left was to tell my own. Not quietly, not in notebooks no one else would see. Out loud. Public. Unshakable. I rose from the couch, legs unsteady but spirit hardening like iron. Evelyn thought she had silenced me with fear, but she had made one fatal mistake. She had forgotten that I was still here, and I still had a voice. The morning after Evelyn's video spread, I woke with a clarity I had not felt in months. The fear was still there, coiled low in my belly, but above it burned something steadier: determination. Evelyn thought she had sealed my fate with curated captions and sentimental music. She believed she had reduced me to a supporting role in my own life, but I was done being silent. I began with my folder. I laid it all out on the dining table: screenshots, letters, bank notices, the renovation forms, even the evaluator's report clearing my mind. Page after page of evidence, each one a fragment of the story Evelyn tried to bury. For weeks I had been writing to myself, whispering truth into the dark. Now I needed to shout it into the light. I called David, my old colleague who had promised to vouch for me. His voice was firm when I explained. "Athena, you can't keep this locked away in notebooks. She's playing in public, you have to do the same." "How?" I asked. "You fight her where she fights you. Online, public, loud. People need to see you're not confused, not fading. They need to see you're furious and right." The idea chilled me. I had avoided social media for years, dismissing it as a place for noise and vanity. But Evelyn had weaponized it against me. And David was right: if I didn't step onto that stage, her performance would go unchallenged. So that night, with trembling hands, I created a profile. My first post was not polished, not pretty. It was a photograph of my notebook lying open on the table, my handwriting scrawled across the page. The caption read, "My name is Athena Myers. This is my home. I have not given it away. Do not believe the story being told in my name." I pressed post before I could lose my nerve. At first silence, then a trickle of comments, some supportive, some skeptical. A few accused me of being manipulated by online trolls. Others thanked me for speaking. The likes grew slowly, then faster, as strangers shared my words. By morning, dozens of people had reposted the image. One journalist even messaged me, asking if I would be willing to talk. Evelyn reacted within hours. She posted a video of herself crying softly into the camera. "I don't know why she's doing this. We only want to take care of her. It breaks my heart to see her confused and paranoid. Her performance was flawless." The comments rushed to her defense. "Poor Evelyn. She's only trying to help. Old age is cruel." I nearly threw my phone across the room. But then I remembered Mr. Grant's advice: do not let her provoke you. Calm, steady, precise. So I posted again. This time, a scan of the evaluator's report, the section underlined, "No evidence of impairment." My caption was simple: "The truth is not confusion. The truth is documented. She is lying." The response was stronger this time. Strangers debated in the comments. Some began to question Evelyn's narrative, asking why she was posting so aggressively if she truly cared. A crack had formed in her web. but Evelyn struck back harder. She uploaded a montage of family photos, me smiling at birthdays, her hand clasped in mine. The music swelled, captions painted me as a beloved matriarch slowly slipping away. I stared at the screen, fury boiling. She was not just twisting my life, she was using my own smiles, my own love, as weapons. I turned to my notebook and wrote with shaking hands, "She wants pity. She wants to be seen as my savior. But I will not let her drown me in sentiment. I will tell them the truth she cannot erase." The next day, I accepted the journalist's invitation. A young woman named Claire came to the apartment, her recorder small, her questions sharp. She listened as I laid everything out: the dinner, the false documents, the bank withdrawals, the posts. She studied the folder of evidence, the stacks of paper. When she left, she promised, "I'll make sure your side is heard." That night, I sat by the window watching the city lights flicker. For the first time in months, I felt less alone. Evelyn had her story, yes, but now I had mine. And then, just as I let myself exhale, a new letter arrived. This one was heavier, thicker, the envelope marked with a court seal. My hands trembled as I tore it open. It was a petition, filed by Evelyn and Miles. They were requesting guardianship over me, citing diminished capacity and documented confusion. The hearing was set for 2 weeks. My breath caught. Guardianship. Not just the apartment, not just the money. They wanted legal control over my life, where I lived, what I owned, who I was. For a long time I sat in silence, the papers heavy in my lap. Then I rose, walked to the table, and opened my notebook. My hand was steady as I wrote, "This is not the end. This is the beginning of the final stand. They want ownership of me. They will find out I am not so easily owned." The days leading to the hearing were heavy with dread, yet also sharpened by purpose. I knew Evelyn and Miles would arrive with rehearsed tears and polished speeches, their story already fed to neighbors, friends, strangers online. But I also knew something they didn't. I was ready. Mr. Grant met me each afternoon in his office. We rehearsed my testimony the way an actor rehearses lines, but mine were no performance. I spoke my truth, clear and unflinching, until my voice carried a steadiness that even Evelyn's tricks could not fracture. The night before the hearing, I could not sleep. I sat in the apartment surrounded by the evidence I had gathered: the folder, the notebook, the evaluator's report, the bank letters. They seemed small compared to Evelyn's sprawling web of lies, yet together they formed something solid, undeniable. At dawn, I whispered to myself, "This is my story. I will not let her finish it for me." The courthouse smelled of old wood and polish. My shoes echoed too loudly on the stone floor as I entered, clutching my folder like a shield. Evelyn and Miles were already there, seated at their table. Evelyn wore a pale dress, her hair perfect, her face painted with the sadness of a saint. She glanced at me and offered a small, pitying smile. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. Evelyn spoke first, her voice trembling with rehearsed emotion. She spoke of my confusion, my forgetfulness, my erratic moods. She painted herself as a devoted granddaughter, sacrificing her own comfort to protect me. Miles backed her up with steady, calm tones. He spoke of wiring checks, of unpaid bills he claimed to have covered, of concern for the baby's future. Their performance was flawless, a duet of devotion and duty. I sat still, my hands clasped in my lap, the folder heavy beside me. Then it was my turn. I rose slowly, every eye in the room on me. My voice trembled at first, but only for a moment. "My name is Athena Myers. I am 60 years old. I live in the Penthouse apartment on Elm Street. I know the date, I know the president, I know my own life." I lifted the evaluator's report, reading the line aloud, no evidence of impairment. I set it on the table with deliberate care. I held up the bank letter. "This shows withdrawals made under false pretenses, using a fabricated physician's note. I did not authorize them." I showed the renovation request. "Filed without my consent, using a power of attorney that only applies if I am incapacitated. I am not." Page by page, I laid it all out. My voice grew steadier, stronger. I recounted the dinner where Evelyn announced my supposed gift, the silence I had been trapped in, the way she weaponized my smiles. At last, I held up my notebook. "For months, I have written everything: dates, times, words. This is my record, not curated for social media, not edited for sympathy. The truth in ink." The judge studied the pile growing before him, his brow furrowed. Evelyn tried to interrupt, her voice sharp now, stripped of its sugar. "She is lying. She is confused. You can see how paranoid she is, writing down every little thing." The judge raised a hand, silencing her. His eyes lingered on me. "Ms. Myers, you appear lucid, organized, precise. The documentation supports your account." A pause hung heavy, every breath in the room suspended. Then he spoke the words I had been aching to hear. The petition for guardianship is denied. The air rushed out of me. My knees nearly buckled, but I stayed standing, spine straight. Evelyn's face paled, her mask slipping for the first time. Miles's hand tightened on her arm, his jaw clenched. The judge continued. Furthermore, I suggest you review your legal arrangements. Power of attorney can be revoked. You may want to reconsider who holds it. I nodded, my throat thick with emotion. I will. When the session ended, Evelyn swept past me, her eyes burning. For the first time, there was no smile, no camera, no performance, only fury. This isn't over, she hissed. I met her gaze, calm at last. Yes, it is, at least for me. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon, the city alive around me. For the first time in months, the air felt clear, sharp mine. That night, I sat at the dining table with my notebook open. I wrote slowly, carefully, savoring each word. The web has broken. The story is mine again. She tried to erase me, but I spoke louder. I am Athena Myers, and I am still here. I closed the book and placed it on the shelf beside my husband's photograph. His smile seemed different now, not a warning, but approval. The apartment was quiet, but no longer suffocating. It was mine again, my sanctuary, my story. And though scars remained, I knew this much. Evelyn had underestimated me. She believed she could write my ending. But I had written it myself.